Welcome to the debate. In modern structural engineering, a suspension bridge really survives because of redundancy.
Right, the backup systems.
Exactly. If one tension cable snaps under the weight of like a heavy load or a sudden violent crosswind, the bridge doesn't just collapse into the river. The load distributes, right?
Yeah, the secondary cables take the string.
Right, and the structure holds. But looking ahead to the highly anticipated 2026 NFL season, the Indianapolis Colts have intentionally engineered a bridge with absolutely zero safety cables.
Zero.
If one single critical cable snaps, the entire franchise goes into the river.
And it is worth noting that they are building this particular bridge over incredibly troubled waters. I mean, the storm isn't just a possibility here, it is a historical guarantee.
It really is. But before we get into the specifics of this impending storm, I want to quickly welcome everyone to our channel, NFL Nexus. We like to keep things dynamic, fun, and interactive here. So please, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment on what you thought down below.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to hear your takes. And if you want to take it a step further, become a channel member and get exclusive content and perks. Just click the join button below.
So, diving back in, we are looking at a franchise entering year 10 under general manager Chris Ballard, and it's critical to state right up front that this is not just another season on the calendar.
Not at all.
The Colts are operating under an explicit, public, make-or-break mandate from CEO Carly Ursay-Gordon, and the context for that mandate is just crucial.
Well, it follows one of the most jarring sequences of events we have ever seen in modern football.
Right. Just last year, during the 2025 season, Indianapolis started 8-2. I mean, they looked like an absolute juggernaut on both sides of the ball.
They really did. And then, they suffered a complete, unmitigated structural collapse.
A 7-game losing streak.
Yeah, finishing 8-9, completely missing the postseason. It was a total freefall, the kind of collapse that, frankly, costs people their careers.
Which brings us directly to our core question today. Is the Colts all-in roster construction? A strategy characterized by massive investments in high-risk, high-reward veterans and a foundational running back. Is that a structurally sound strategy to finally break their AFC South drought?
Or is it a desperate, fundamentally flawed approach that leaves the team critically vulnerable to disaster?
Right. And I'm going to argue that acquiring elite blue-chip talent gives the Colts a championship ceiling that entirely justifies the inherent risks. I mean, you have to play to win, not play to avoid losing.
And I am going to argue that this roster is less of a bridge and more of like a fragile F1 car. Built for top speed, maybe, but entirely derailed if a single millimeter of the aerodynamics is dented.
A fragile F1 car. Okay. Yeah, because it is heavily dependent on volatile positions and players with terrifying medical histories. It's an approach built more out of front office desperation than sound, sustainable strategy.
Well, let me lay out the mathematical and competitive foundation from my perspective here, because I think people look at the injury report and they miss the broader architecture of what Chris Ballard is doing.
Okay, what's the architecture? In the modern NFL, championships are not won by having the best 45th to 53rd men on the depth chart. They are won by having elite, top-tier difference makers who force opposing coordinators to change their game plans.
Right, the superstars.
Exactly. The Colts have recognized this and successfully consolidated their resources. When you possess a transcendent talent like cornerback Sauce Gardner,
even though it cost them 2 first-round picks.
Right, yes, even though it cost 2 first-rounders and A.D. Mitchell to pry him away from the Jets. But when you pair that with an offensive engine like Jonathan Taylor, who just posted 1,585 rushing yards and 18 touchdowns in 2025, you are maximizing your championship window.
If they stay on the field.
But that 8-2 start wasn't a mirage. It was proof of concept. The subsequent collapse wasn't a structural team-building failure. It was a localized anomaly caused by catastrophic, highly improbable injury luck.
Highly improbable?
Yeah, you do not abandon a winning formula just because you hit a patch of bad statistical variance.
I come at it from a different way. That wasn't just bad variance. That was the inevitable consequence of a deeply flawed blueprint.
Inevitable?
Yes. The Colts are operating out of pure desperation to save the current regime's jobs. When your strategy relies on massive financial and draft capital commitments to players carrying extreme injury risks, you aren't building a contender.
But you're building a high ceiling.
You're playing roulette with the franchise's future. I mean, look at the foundation of this team right now. You have a starting quarterback in Daniel Jones, who is actively recovering from a Week 14 Achilles tear against the Jaguars.
Which is a tough injury, sure.
And you have a star cornerback in Charvarius Ward, who suffered 3 concussions last season. He openly admitted to the press that he is exactly 1 hit away from forced retirement. This top-heavy approach completely eliminates your margin for error.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective on how that top-heavy defensive structure actually functions on the field, mechanically speaking.
Okay, mechanically.
Let's look at this high-stakes gamble in the secondary. When you talk to defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo, his assessment of this defense fundamentally revolves around defensive geometry.
Defensive geometry.
Right. When you put a 100% healthy Sauce Gardner on one boundary and Charvarius Ward on the other, you fundamentally change the math for the opposing offense.
Sure, on paper.
If Sauce erases 1/3 of the field entirely, the safety doesn't have to shade his way. That safety can now bracket the slot receiver or drop into the box to stop the run.
Right, that frees up the safety.
Anarumo specifically pointed out that this duo forces opposing quarterbacks to hold the ball for an extra half second to a full second as they move through their read progressions.
Which is a long time.
In NFL pass rushing terms, a full second is an eternity. It makes everyone in the front 7 instantly better because the tight coverage essentially manufactures pressure.
Okay, but
Isn't investing premium capital in shutdown cornerbacks essentially like buying beachfront real estate? Yes, it is incredibly expensive. Yes, it is heavily exposed to the elements and vulnerable to incoming storms.
very vulnerable.
But historically, when the weather is clear, it yields the highest return on investment for an elite championship-level defense. You have to pay the premium for the location.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why that metaphor breaks down the second you apply it to the 2026 Indianapolis Colts.
All right, break it down.
With beachfront real estate, the house is actually standing there most of the year. The Colts paid a premium for a mansion that they couldn't even live in.
That's a bit of an exaggeration.
Is it? Let's look at the actual mechanisms of this quote-unquote elite defense. Sauce Gardner provided exactly 2.75 games of value in 2025 because of a nagging calf injury.
Soft tissue injuries happen.
You traded 2 first-round picks and a promising young receiver for less than 3 games of elite corner play? And the other side of that elite real estate? Charvarius Ward.
Who is incredible in man coverage.
They gave him a 3-year, $54 million deal. When he plays, he's sticky in man coverage. Absolutely. But as I mentioned, he suffered 3 concussions last year alone. 3.
It was a brutal stretch, yeah.
He didn't even participate in mandatory minicamp because of back tightness. This isn't just regular soft tissue injury risk. This is neurological trauma risk. One wrong collision on a routine tackle and your $54 million investment is permanently gone.
But the risk is priced into the potential reward. The calf injury for Sauce Gardner is now fully in the rearview mirror. Modern sports science has completely localized the tear. He is back to 100%, and he looked absolutely dominant in minicamp.
Minicamp is not live contact.
And Ward, after consulting with independent neurologists, has stated he is spiritually and physically ready to go. The ceiling of that duo is the best in the NFL since, Vontae Davis was locking down half the field here in 2014.
You can't just wave away the floor, though. And the vulnerability isn't even just on the boundary with those two. It's in the slot.
The slot is always tough to fill.
If we are talking about defensive geometry, let's talk about the middle of the field. To replace Kenny Moore II, who was a Pro Bowler, a 9-year veteran, and the absolute linchpin of their run defense and nickel packages, they are relying on Justin Wally.
Wally has great upside.
Let's remind the audience, nickel packages are those formations where you bring in a 5th defensive back to counter passing formations. The slot corner has to diagnose run fits, adjust to quick pre-snap motion, and tackle in open space.
Right, it's a very demanding role.
And to do that, the Colts are leaning on Wally, a 3rd-round pick from 2025 who is coming off a torn ACL, suffered in a joint practice against the Ravens.
He's fully cleared, though.
You're replacing a decade of institutional knowledge and diagnostic speed with a kid whose knee just had to be surgically reconstructed. You're telling me the secondary is going to dictate terms to opposing offenses? It's not a secondary, it's a medical ward.
That's an interesting point, though. I would frame it differently. You bring up Wally's knee, but before that injury, Wally was matching Rashad Bateman stride for stride on complex double moves.
In practice.
The raw movement skills are undeniably there, and Anarumo noted there has been zero drop-off in his lateral agility since returning to form. But look, if that secondary is as fragile as you suggest, it naturally shifts the burden entirely to the offense to control the game and keep the defense off the field.
Which brings us to the other side of the ball.
Exactly, and that brings us to how Chris Ballard has allocated financial resources on the offensive side, which I actually think is a masterclass in exploiting market inefficiencies.
A masterclass. Paying a running back top of the market money in 2026.
Yes, absolutely. I know anyone listening right now is probably shouting, but you can't pay a running back in the modern NFL. But if you look at the actual business economics, building their offensive engine around Jonathan Taylor is brilliant.
I mean, he's good, but brilliant?
He is still squarely in his prime. He just turned 27. He is ESPN's fifth-ranked back in the entire league. Now look at what is happening to the wide receiver market.
It's exploding.
Prices are skyrocketing to an absurd, unsustainable degree. The Colts themselves felt forced to hand a 4-year, $114 million contract to Alec Pierce.
Which is just, wow.
Right. And let's be honest, Pierce has only crossed the 1,000-yard mark once in his 4-year career. When average to above-average wide receivers are commanding nearly $30 million a year, paying $15 to $18 million for a super-talented, game-changing running back who can catch passes out of the backfield is an incredible market inefficiency.
It's cheaper, sure.
A back like Taylor guarantees offensive production, controls the clock, and keeps that high-priced, high-risk defense rested on the sideline. It is a highly strategic allocation of cap space.
That's a compelling argument, but have you considered how incredibly volatile an offense becomes when its engine is a 27-year-old running back with heavy career mileage, and its driver is a quarterback coming off a catastrophic lower body injury?
I don't think
You are entirely glossing over Daniel Jones.
I'm not glossing over him. He is part of the ecosystem that Jonathan Taylor supports. I mean, a strong run game is a quarterback's best friend.
An ecosystem requires stability at the center to thrive. Daniel Jones tore his Achilles in Week 14 against Jacksonville.
It was a bad tear, yeah.
An Achilles tear is devastating for any player, but for a quarterback who relies on his legs for his primary competitive advantage, it fundamentally alters his kinetic chain.
Meaning what, exactly? For his throwing motion?
Meaning the generation of power that starts in the foot, transfers through the hips, and ends at the fingertips is fundamentally broken.
But quarterbacks have recovered from that before.
Rarely with their full mobility intact. If he cannot firmly plant and drive off that back foot, his accuracy wanes, especially on deep out routes that require immense velocity.
He's still got arm talent.
Furthermore, if he cannot escape the pocket with the burst he used to have, defensive coordinators simply won't fear his scramble. They won't spy him. Instead, they will load the box.
To stop Taylor.
Exactly. And by loading the box, I mean they will walk a safety down, put 8 or sometimes 9 men near the line of scrimmage, and dare Daniel Jones to beat them from the pocket with a surgically repaired tendon.
But that opens up the play action.
Your brilliant economic theory about Jonathan Taylor falls apart when defenses don't have to respect the pass because they know the quarterback can't physically punish them for crowding the line.
I think you're underestimating Jones there.
That 8-2 to 8-9 collapse last year, that wasn't a fluke. It was a feature of a top-heavy team lacking foundational stability at the game's most important position.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning because you are evaluating the Jones and Taylor dynamic in a vacuum without considering the supporting infrastructure Ballard has specifically drafted to protect them.
The infrastructure?
Yeah, the modern NFL salary cap requires a barbell approach.
A barbell approach.
Right. You pay your blue-chip stars massive contracts on one end of the barbell, and to balance the ledger, you rely heavily on young, cost-controlled players on rookie deals on the other end.
Which is a huge gamble.
But Chris Ballard's draft and stash pipeline is perfectly calibrated to do exactly this. Let's look at the mechanisms of how this depth actually works. Take Jalen Travis.
Okay, Travis.
We are talking about a fourth-round pick who is an absolute mountain of a man. 6'8", 340 pounds. When longtime veteran right tackle Braden Smith went down last year, Travis stepped in and started 4 games.
4 games.
Do you know how he survived as a rookie? His sheer wingspan and anchor strength. He forces elite speed rushers into a much wider arc to get around him, which plays perfectly into how Daniel Jones naturally steps up into the pocket.
He did hold up well, I'll give you that.
Travis produced a 71.2 pass blocking grade from Pro Football Focus, allowing only 1 single sack in those starts. He was pro-ready.
Over a month, yeah.
And on the defensive side, you have Jalen Tuimoloau returning from an oblique strain to rotate with Laiatu Latu and Arden Key. This isn't desperation. This is hitting on mid-round draft picks.
Is it, though?
It is exactly how modern front offices successfully manage the cap while paying top-of-the-market rates to a quarterback and star defenders. You have to acknowledge that successfully integrating players like Travis proves the system works.
I come at it from a different way. You are calling it a perfectly calibrated pipeline. I call it crossing your fingers, closing your eyes, and praying.
Oh, come on.
Let's look closely at the players you just named, because the reality is much bleaker than the highlights suggest. You're praising Jalen Travis for a 4-game sample size.
He allowed 1 sack.
Yes, he filled in admirably for a month. But NFL offensive line play is about 17 games of grueling physical consistency. The human body breaks down in the trenches in ways fans don't always appreciate.
He's built for it.
Assuming a 4th-round pick can seamlessly replace a franchise staple like Braden Smith over a full season, dealing with defensive coordinators who now have a month of film to study his weaknesses is a massive leap of faith.
They adapt.
And as for Jalen Tuimoloau, he managed exactly 17 tackles and 1 tackle for loss in 13 games as a rookie before his oblique strain.
He was a rookie.
Those aren't the numbers of a reliable rotational edge rusher. Those are the numbers of a player who is still completely raw and overwhelmed by NFL play speed.
But defensive ends historically take the biggest leaps from year 1 to year 2. They need that rookie season to develop their counter moves and adapt to the sheer anchor strength of NFL tackles. You can't write off a premium athlete because of a quiet rookie year.
And the Colts do not have time to let them figure it out. That is the core issue here. You mentioned Carly Ursay's mandate at the very beginning of the show.
Right, the make-or-break year.
This is a make-or-break season. When ownership puts the entire front office on notice, requiring quantum leaps from young, previously injured, historically unproductive players isn't a strategic choice. It reveals that the roster is terrifyingly thin.
I disagree. It just shows they drafted well.
Remember my F1 car metaphor? If Jalen Travis regresses to the mean, that's a dent in the aerodynamics. Suddenly, Daniel Jones is taking hits from the blind side. His kinetic chain is already compromised, and now he's getting hit.
Every quarterback takes hits.
If Tuimoloau doesn't suddenly figure out NFL pass blocking schemes, your $54 million cornerbacks are going to be covering receivers for 5 or 6 seconds instead of 3. The downstream effects of this top-heavy approach mean that one single failure at the bottom of the roster acts as a wrecking ball to the entire structure.
But that is true for any NFL team. Every team in the league is one torn ACL on the offensive line away from having to radically adjust their scheme.
Not every team is this top-heavy, though.
The difference is, when the Colts' primary structure is intact, their ceiling is simply unmatched in their division. Let's summarize where we stand on this.
All right.
My position is that despite the obvious medical risks, which frankly are present in every single locker room from August to January, Chris Ballard has successfully compiled genuine blue-chip talent at the game's premium positions.
The stars are there, yes.
Having Sauce Gardner locking down the perimeter to manipulate defensive geometry, a healthy Jonathan Taylor exploiting light boxes with elite efficiency, and premium pass rushers on the edge gives the Indianapolis Colts a legitimate, undeniable AFC South title ceiling.
It's a high ceiling.
You do not win Super Bowls by playing it safe and hoarding average players. You win them by assembling top-tier talent that the opposition simply cannot match man for man.
And my summary is that while the names on the back of the jerseys look phenomenal on a stadium marquee, the structural foundation holding them up is a precarious high-wire act.
A high-wire act.
Yes, this is a roster where exactly one concussion protocol for Charvarius Ward or one aggravated Achilles for Daniel Jones could trigger a repeat of last year's historic 7-game collapse.
If disaster strikes twice,
When your entire competitive window relies on the absolute best-case medical scenarios for players with long, documented histories of trauma, you are not a championship contender. You are a looming disaster waiting for a spark, and if that spark hits, it will end the current front office's tenure in Indianapolis.
well, if there is one point of convergence we have reached today, it is that the Colts are undeniably the most fascinating boom or bust experiment of the 2026 NFL season.
Oh, absolutely.
There is absolutely zero middle ground for this team. They are either hosting a playoff game in January or they are executing a complete front office overhaul by February.
No question about it. It is going to be spectacular television one way or the other.
It really forces you to look beyond the surface-level star power and examine the deep structural economics, the physiological realities, and the risk management philosophies of NFL team building.
There's a lot going on under the hood.
There are so many more layers to explore regarding Chris Ballard's tenure and his drafting philosophy in the material we didn't even have time to touch on today.
We could do a whole other show on it.
We really could. So we'll leave it to the listener to decide. Are the Colts brilliant architects of a modern contender, or gamblers pushing all their chips in on a bad hand? Think back to our suspension bridge. Do the Colts have enough tension cables to weather the 17-game storm? Or are they one snap away from the river?